I believe the biggest problem in the world is that people don't understand themselves enough. This show is designed to help you understand your INFJ personality, heal from your past, and create a life that you love. I'm Sarah Kuhn, and this is the Quiet Ones podcast. Hi there. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. I want to get started by just taking care of a couple of housekeeping things. I wanted to let you know that we're going to be here every single day this week at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. If you haven't yet, make sure that you get access to all of the extras for this challenge. There'll be some PDFs and some other things. You can do that at infjwoman.com/challenge. It's free to sign up. But there's a portal where all of the videos will be there in case you miss one and you want to catch up on them. It's a great place to access everything. So today we're going to talk about how to make a buzzworthy blog. But before we get started talking about that, I wanted to introduce myself just in case you don't know me. My name is Sarah Kuhn. This is one of the 3 pictures of me that I like. I write a blog that's called INFJ Woman, and this is what it looks like. I've been writing it for about 4 years now. I also have a podcast that's called the Quiet Ones Podcast. If you haven't subscribed to it or listened to it yet, make sure that you check it out. You can find it on all major podcast platforms. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. Everywhere is INFJ Woman, but then Twitter, of course, had to be different. But that's where you can find me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my story to get started, just in case you don't know me, or maybe you're just not familiar with how I started my blog. I always wanted to be a writer. From as long as I can remember, I love to read. And every time I got done reading a book, I would always sit there after I'd finished the last page and think, man, I wish I could write something like that. Wouldn't it be so awesome if I could write a book that people couldn't put down, that would touch people's heart and soul the same way that this book just touched me? I thought initially that I wanted to write fiction because I love to read fiction. I'll make a confession. I read all of the Twilight books in like a week and I loved them. There's a lot of other books that I've read too, very quickly. I love Evan Carmichael. I like Ruth Soukup and Kathy Heller, which are all nonfiction books that I've read more recently. But I loved reading, there was one author, I think her name was Lori Wick. She wrote books about like the 1800s, the Wild West, which I always thought were super interesting. And I read all of her books super quickly. So I thought initially that I wanted to write fiction, and I read a bunch of books about writing. But what would happen is I would start writing, and then I would start reading what I had written, and then start going, oh, that's terrible. Ooh, I don't know about that. This is awful. It's never going to work. And then I would put it down again, and it would be months before I picked it back up. But then what happened was about 2015, 2016, I went through a really bad time in my life. It may not be easy to tell from this picture. This is another one of my favorite pictures of me. I worked for a marketing company that managed race car drivers and sponsors for about 3 years. You can see behind me and my friend, there's actually a race car driver who was like photobombing our picture here, which was totally unintended. We didn't even see it until days after we took that picture. But I loved that job because I loved being around race cars and I loved going to the racetrack, which is where we are in this picture. We're at Charlotte Motor Speedway in Charlotte, North Carolina. But the thing that I didn't like is the job was really stressful. I was working 24 hours a day. I was always on call because I managed social media. And the boss that I had was very, very stressful to work with as well. He was not a nice person. So after working there for probably about a year and a half, one of my friends suggested that I go and see her counselor. And initially, I kind of blew her off and I said, no, that's really not for me. And she said, well, you have a lot of the same problems that I have. And I think, it has benefited me to go to counseling and I think it would help you a lot. And it eventually got so bad that I finally agreed to go and see her counselor. And within maybe a month of seeing her counselor, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I really struggled for a while with that, even just with the diagnosis, because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what would help. And I didn't feel like I had a lot of support. I tried medication for a while, and that didn't really work for me. I'm definitely not anti-medication because I know that it does work for some people. It just didn't work for me. So then I tried things like yoga and I tried eating better. I tried regulating my sleep schedule and things got a little bit better, but I still didn't feel like I really understood who I was. And I felt like that was a part of why I was struggling because my identity at that point was really tied to my job. And then what happened was I lost my job and I really, really, really felt lost. What helped me was when I found my personality type. I remembered that I had taken a personality test when I was in college several years earlier. And I found it and I started reading it and studying more about it and really digging into what it meant and why it was important. And that knowledge helped me to understand how I was feeling and what I was going through. And it really helped me to figure out what all was going on in my life and where there were some places where I was failing myself and some places that I could do better. And it helped me to start turning things around and going in a different direction. It helped me to help things get better. So, in this process, I joined a Facebook group that was about personality types. And for a while, it was really, really awesome. It was everything that I needed. I felt like I had a bunch of friends and I had a lot of support, and it was really great. And it helped me actually make a big move in my life. I moved from where I was in the Midwest to Boston. And there were so many people there supporting me, sharing my wins with me, and helping me through some of the things that I was struggling with. But then it it took a turn for the worse, I guess you would say. Um, the group wasn't really regulated very well, and there were some things that maybe I shared that I shouldn't have that people took the wrong way, and there was nobody to regulate what people were saying, basically. And so it went from being one of the best things in my life to one of the worst things because I felt really attacked. Um, and so I ended up leaving the group. And it was really heartbreaking for me because it was a bad time in my life that I was already going through. Again, not as bad as before, but it was still something that I was struggling with. And I really missed the group because it had been something that was really, really good. And I felt like those people understood me. So then I was like, well, okay. Um, I left the group or got kicked out of the group, however you want to say it. It was kind of a mutual decision for me to leave. But then I thought, okay, well, I still want that experience. I want that group. Maybe I should just start my own group. And that's what I did. I knew that, I mean, had never had my own Facebook or Instagram account at that point. I had managed them for the companies that I worked for because I think I forgot to mention the work that I do is in digital marketing, which I've worked in digital marketing now for about 10 years. So I had a lot of experience managing other people's social media accounts, but I had never thought to have one on my own. So I started an Instagram account, and this was November, December-ish. I think I started it a little bit before I started my blog, of 2018. And I think it was definitely within 6 months, but it may have even been less than 6 months. I had 10,000 followers on Instagram. And it was a shock to me because I had never managed a business account that had 10,000 followers. But it was really, really exciting and interesting and fun to not only have this account that I could do whatever I wanted with, basically, but it was also a group of people who were just like me. They were struggling with the same things that I was struggling with. They had the same type of challenges. They're mostly highly sensitive, all introverts, all have really deep feelings. You just go down the list, and these were all people that were like me. So the Facebook group that I left, I think there was like 1,500 people in it. And when I stepped out on my own, it was very quickly that there were a lot more people than that. And I think now my Instagram is almost 75,000 people 4 years later. Okay, I'm looking through my notes, which I got lost in. Okay, so about the same time I started writing my blog, that was about the time when I started my Instagram account, maybe just a little bit after that. And my blog didn't look like this back then. I pulled up some pictures for a YouTube video that I made last week, or this past weekend, I guess I posted it, from a website called the Wayback Machine. And it basically like takes pictures of websites at different points in time. And so there was a snapshot of my blog on there from like 2019. And honestly, I don't even remember it looking like that. But I've been through so many iterations of this website. And it doesn't have to be that complicated, honestly, but I like building websites, and I learned a lot about building websites through building my own blog. So it's been through quite a few changes, and that's for sure. But when I first started, I wasn't really even sure what elements went into building a website. I knew that blogs were or I thought they were hosted on WordPress. I had a Blogger account a long time ago. I think it was called Blogger. That was a free blogging website. Because I've had blogs in the past before this one. I probably had 6 or 8 of them. But what had happened was I would write something, just pour my heart and soul into a blog post. And then I would hit post, and it would be public for everyone to see. And I would get really, really, really nervous. And I would start thinking, like overthinking about, do I really want everybody to see that? And then I would hit like unpublish and delete the whole thing. And then there were times when I hit publish, and I was like, well, why is nobody reading it? Aren't people supposed to read it? I mean, I poured my heart and soul into this thing, and nobody's reading it. Oh man, it must be terrible. I must be a terrible writer. Like, okay, I have to get rid of it. I can't have it out there with nobody reading it. So then I would just delete it. And then I went through so much of self-doubt and struggling, and I had no idea that anybody else ever struggled with that or how to get over it until I started this blog, because I knew when I started this blog that I had a message that I wanted to share. I knew that I could help people with what I wanted to write about, and so I decided that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what other people said about it. It didn't matter if anybody read it. I thought, well, if I could help one person, then that's all that matters. If only one person ever reads what I have to write and it helps them, that's all that matters. So when I started, not only did I not know how to build a website or where to even put a blog, I didn't know how to write a blog post. I am not a writer. I know that sounds really, really funny because I've written a blog now for for 4 years, but it's really hard to think of myself as a writer nowadays. When I was in grade school, I was really good at math, and I was never really very good at English. I'm terrible at spelling. My mom made me take spelling for all 12 years that I was in grade school, and I think it's only required for like 8 years. But she was bound and determined that I was going to be a good speller. And even after all of those classes, I'm still not good at spelling. If you read my blog, you'll probably notice that words are sometimes spelled incorrectly. Maybe the punctuation's not perfect. And that was something in the beginning that I really struggled with because I knew it was bad. And when I finally was able to set up my blog and I started posting things, some of the first comments that I got were, "Hey, you spelled this word wrong," or "Hey, you missed this punctuation." And initially I thought, well, that's really disheartening. Like, yes, I know I'm a really bad speller. I know that punctuation isn't great. And I always felt super self-conscious when people wrote that stuff. And I would go back and change it right away to make sure that it was correct. But nowadays, I think about it a lot differently. I think, well, at least somebody's reading what I've written, right? At least they're commenting on my blogs. Maybe by them reading it and commenting on it, maybe then other people will see it too. It took a lot of work to get there, believe me. It was not an overnight type of thing. But even though I wasn't a writer, I felt I felt like I had this calling to write. I felt like there was something pushing me or pulling me to start writing. And now I know that it was my intuition that was telling me that this is what I needed to do. And even though I didn't really understand it, I had had enough experience at that point that I knew when I had a feeling that I needed to do something, that that was the thing that I had to do, because eventually I was going to do it because the feeling doesn't go away. I don't know about you, but for me, when I get that familiar intuition feeling, it doesn't just go away. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger until I do it. So in the beginning, I started writing, and some people tell me nowadays that they go back and read every single blog post that I've ever written. And while I'm thankful that they love my blog and that they're reading it, I sort of cringe when they tell me that they're reading the first blog post that I wrote, because I still feel like they're probably not really that great. Early on, and this happens to me too now, there are still times when I feel what I call resistance. I start thinking about all the reasons not to write. I start thinking about all the reasons not to put myself out there. And it would happen a lot of times right when I went to hit post. And it was like my cursor would just hover over the post button. And instead of just clicking it and going about my day, I would sit there and think, oh, is this what I want to do? Do I really want this out there? Is this really for me? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? So the way that I got through that, past it, over it, however you want to say that, I started thinking about the people who write blogs, who have podcasts, who have YouTube channels that I really love. And I started thinking about why I love those people, why they inspire me. One of my favorite blogs when I first started blogging, even before I first started blogging, my friend who had encouraged me to go to counseling, she also sent me a blog that's called Monastery that was written by Glennon Doyle. And back then in like 2014, 15, Glennon was writing about the same things that I struggled with, which were depression, anxiety, and eating disorders, which I had all of those things. And she wrote about them in a way that made them seem normal. It made it seem like I wasn't broken and messed up, but that it was just something that a lot of people dealt with. She has this saying that life is hard, and it's not because you're doing it wrong, it's just that it's really hard. And that saying helped me so much. There are some other people that helped me a lot. A lady named Kathy Heller, she has a podcast that it used to be called Don't Keep Your Day Job. I think it's called The Kathy Heller Show now. But she talks a lot about starting your own business. And she's very inspirational and motivational. She talks about mindfulness and taking care of yourself, and all those sorts of things as well. And I also like a lady named Amy Porterfield who has a podcast as well. I forget what her podcast is called, but not only does she talk about business, but she talks about things like self-doubt. And she also has an eating disorder. And so she talks about the things that she struggles with in life and how to get past them. So all of the people that I like who really inspire me are people who have the same issues that I have, and they talk about them. And I thought, well, okay, some of the things that I want to talk about are like these really deep, important issues. And if those people can talk about them and it's helped me, then surely I can talk about my issues too, and maybe it'll help other people. So I decided to make one blog post a week. Initially, when I first set up my website, I was like, oh, there's nothing here, and I'd really like for it to be more built out, and that would be really nice. But I got really overwhelmed. And so I thought, okay, one blog post a week, I can do that. And I hit post on the first blog post and nobody read it. And I sat there for a while and I checked it almost every day that week and nobody read it. And to be really honest, I was really relieved because I was like, oh, I don't know if it's good. I probably misspelled like half of the words. It's probably really bad. But so I was kind of like disheartened that nobody read it on the one hand, but also really super relieved that nobody read it on the other hand. And so I was like, okay, it was January when I started this, like December, January-ish. And I'm like, okay, I made this plan to write a blog post a week, whether anybody reads it or not. So the next week I sit down and write another blog post. And I also made this goal to post them on Monday. So I felt like, I think initially I started with Sunday because I thought, well, I can write the blog post on Sunday. But then what happened was I just didn't want to do anything over the weekend. And so then I would write it on Monday, right? So I thought, okay, Monday, by the time I go to bed on Monday, I have to write a blog post. And within the second month, a few people read it. Month 3, there was like 1,000 people that had viewed my blog. And by month 5, there was like 10,000 people that were reading it every single month. And then it got up to like, I think there was a month that 100,000 people read it. And I don't keep track of the stats anymore now. Initially, I would look at it all the time, and I had to make sure that there were a certain number of people that were reading it every month because that was important. But now I have so much other stuff to do, and I realized it doesn't really matter how many people read it. It's not about the statistics. It's about whether I'm helping people. It's about building a truly engaged audience, building an audience of people who I can really help, who really need the help that I can give. So really it was a growing the audience had several different parts to it, but one of the most important things was that I posted a blog post every single week, because nobody's going to read your blog if there's nothing there for them to read, right? But if you keep posting it, it's kind of like build it and they will come, right? If you keep doing the same thing and you have a consistent cadence to what you're doing, you post a blog post every single Monday or every single Sunday, whenever it is, people will learn that that's when you're posting something new, and they'll show up because they want to hear from you. So I finally had people reading my blog posts, and I thought, okay, that's great. But then what happened was I started getting emails and messages, some on my Instagram account, some that were posted like comments on blog posts, and a lot of them went like this. This one over here says, "This Instagram account and these posts help me so much to feel understood. So many of them resonate with me. Thank you." And this one, "When I'm listening to you, I'm feeling understood." And this is an email that I've got. "I just wanted to send a quick email and extend a sincere, heartfelt, energetic thank you for the space that you're holding and the work that you are performing. It's just necessary. I follow you on LinkedIn. It's amazing to see a space like this exists and feels like I'm spending my time with an old friend when I watch your videos and the individuals you choose to interview. I almost wish I had found you a couple of years ago. I would have given my left arm then to know that you existed. And not but that coexists with the fact that timing is always an interesting friend to us INFJs. I felt compelled to just say, keep it up. I only see this space that you are holding growing and evolving." I was so touched when I read this email, I have to say. It was one of those days where I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't keep going. This is too much. I can't keep writing blog posts and doing podcasts and keeping up with everything else that I have. Like, I have to shut it down for a while. And it's always those times when I get these types of emails and then I'm like, okay, I have to keep going. Like, there's a reason that I'm here, that I'm doing this. There's a reason, and I need to be here and I need to keep doing it. And there's just one more. This one says, "Sarah, I really appreciate your daily emails. It's a reminder for me that I need to love myself more and accept who I am." I really, really loved that one, because that's what I want. I want to help people to love themselves and to understand themselves, to appreciate themselves, and to know that you deserve better. I realized that my purpose is to help people. I went through something really difficult, and just by sharing what I had learned from it and by sharing my experience, what I learned and how I got out of it, I can help others. And it can help them get out of the same experience, or it can help them get out of something similar. And hopefully it can help them get out of it faster. So we started this workshop by talking about, how do you make a buzzworthy blog? Well, in my opinion, the most buzzworthy blog that you can create is one that helps others and that you feel driven to create. Those are the best kind of blogs. Those are the ones that are the most impactful, where you can really help somebody. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of blogging. For INFJs, writing is crucial. It's how we sort out what we're thinking. It's how we figure out who we are as people. It's how we organize everything that's going on in our heads. Over the last 8 weeks, I've been talking a lot about writing on my podcast. And there's a supplemental part of my podcast that you can get to. Um, which of course I didn't put together the URL for it. But it's more about blogging. It is infjwoman.com/season5extras, and the 5 is spelled out like a word. But I've been talking a lot about writing for INFJs and why it's important and why it's crucial and how it can help you. It can help you do so many things. It can help you sort out your problems. It can help you learn how to communicate with other people better. And for us, that's crucial, you know? The next point here is INFJs, we like to help people. And when I wrote that, I thought, no, that's not right. We need to help people. It helps us to help other people. I'm sure you've heard that it's not just an INFJ thing, it's an everybody thing. If you're having a bad day, the best thing that you can do to make your day better is to go help somebody else. That will boost the serotonin in your brain, the feel-good chemicals in your brain, the dopamine, and it'll help you feel better faster than anything else can. And that's one of the benefits of blogging. Just by sharing your experience, you can help other people who are going through the same thing. Another thing that's good about blogging is that it's challenging. And I've been talking on my podcast too about how you need something really big in your life that challenges you. You need something that's really big and important and that's not going to take you a day or a week or a month to do, but that's going to take you a year or 5 years or 10 years. That's how you find real happiness and real meaning in your life, is to challenge yourself to do something big and important. And blogging is definitely that, especially if you're not very good at tech. Building websites, learning how to build websites was one of the most challenging things that I did. But I did it the really hard way, and there's a lot easier way that you can do it. So it's nice to have somebody who has been there and who knows what you're going through, right? That'll help you a little bit with that challenge. So another thing that blogging can do is it creates a community. I never really had a lot of friends for the longest time. And now I have more friends than what I've ever had. And most of them have come from either my blog or my Instagram account, or some other things that I have done only because I've had this blog. And the best part about blogging too is that it's a business. You can make a side income from your blog, or you can make a full-time income. It's really up to you. What do you want and how much time do you have to put into it? It's really up to you. I lost my place in my notes again because I guess technology is it's a little bit more difficult. Or today it's just difficult, right? It's Monday. Okay. So then you have the downside of going it on your own, which is exactly how I started my blog. There was nobody that I knew that had a blog. Nobody I knew had a website. Nobody had a business like that. So I felt like I was completely on my own. The worst part of that is you have to figure everything out on your own, right? There's no one that you can ask questions to. There's no one who's been there before who can tell you, this website is better than that one, or hey, have you tried this one actually? Because this one is actually a lot better. There's no one that you can bounce ideas off of. One of the best things and the worst things about business is there's so much information. I'm one of those people who likes to sign up for all the freebies. And so I have like Amy Porterfield's way of doing things. I have Kathy Heller's way of doing things. I have Ruth Soukup's way of doing things. And then I have 5 other books that I bought that all have different ways. And I'm like, okay, there's like 25 different ways of doing things. How do you know which one is right? And if you don't have anybody who's been there and who's worked through some of those things, you don't have anyone who understands or who can even talk through some of the ideas with you. And there's no one to support you when you're struggling. Maybe you have friends who are supportive, maybe your family is supportive, but if they've never had a blog or they've never owned their own business, they can only be supportive so far, right? They can't help you really make decisions. They can't help you with any of the software or any of the marketing or anything like that. In the summer of 2021, I took a business course. It was a 12-week course that was all about building your own business that one of my favorite authors, favorite podcasters put on. And I was really excited to learn the teacher, her way of doing things. Because she was one of my favorite podcasters and she has a massive audience and she talks about how much money that she makes and it seemed like a really great thing. Part of her course was what she called pods. So she put people into groups of like 3 or 4 or 5. And so you would have a class with her every week, and then you're supposed to have a meeting with your pod every week. And when I signed up for her course, I was like, ooh, I don't really want to meet in a group of my peers. Like, that's not really me. I'm more of a go it on your own type of person. And so I thought, I probably won't do that, but I'm sure the rest of the course will be totally worth it. So in the first week of the course, they assigned us to these groups, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, I guess I can just show up and see what it is. And if it's awful, then I won't go back. So I showed up to this little pod group, and I think there were 5 people in our group, and only one other lady showed up for the meeting. And we started talking, and it turned out that we had a lot in common. And she was trying to build the same kind of business that I was. And she had a similar job to what I had, a day job. And we really hit it off in a lot of different areas of our life. We'd struggled with the same type of depression and anxiety. And there were just a lot of similarities. So we ended up meeting every single week in the group. And then we became friends after, like through that experience. And we still talk to each other after the course. And here it's been a year and a half since the course. And we're still friends. I had no idea that that was going to be like one of the best parts of the course. It was so amazing to be friends with somebody who was going through the exact same thing that I was going through, because their support is on a different level. They understand the same struggles of trying to put yourself out there. Even though she was more extroverted than I am, she had the same issues of like doing live videos on Instagram where she would get super nervous and wasn't sure that she was going to do it. And then she would think about it all day and then say, oh, wait, I'll do it tomorrow, which is something that I have done. But then she struggled with the same sort of putting yourself out there and talking about your problems and worrying about your friends and your family seeing it and all that kind of stuff. So it was so helpful to have somebody who was super supportive, who had been through the same thing. And it's also helpful to have somebody who's really committed. I have another friend who talks about wanting to build a website and start a blog. And I've known him for now 4 years, probably going on 5 years. And he's been going to build a website for the whole 5 years that I've known him, but he never has. And he's been going to start writing a blog and to start a business. And he has so many ideas. He's bought so many courses, and every single one of his ideas is probably an awesome idea if he would just follow through, but he won't. And I've told him, like, that's your problem, is that you won't start. And he's like, yeah, I know that's the problem, but I have this other idea. And I keep telling him that the problem is you have too many ideas. You need to pick one and do something. You need to start taking action. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it later. And he just never does. So while those friends are nice and I absolutely adore him, and he's given me a lot of really good business ideas, it's nice to have somebody who has the same type of motivation that you do and who's actually making progress, who's actually moving forward. I have another friend who, this is not my friend actually. Well, this picture is one of my friends. But um this story I'm going to tell you is about my friend Amy, who started a mastermind, and this picture is not of Amy. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't have any pictures of me and Amy, so I couldn't put a picture of her, and this is one of the few pictures of me that I like. So anyway, my friend Amy started a mastermind group about 6 or 8 months ago, and she asked me if I wanted to join. And when I first met Amy, she's actually one of my INFJ friends that I met through my Instagram account. When we first met in like January of 2020, we both lived around Boston, and so we were able to go out to have coffee and dinner and stuff before the pandemic hit. And it was really nice to be able to go out with her in person and have a friend that I actually had in person, because most of my friends live in other places in the world. And then, of course, as it happened, the summer of 2021, she moved to Nashville, um, which is quite a ways from Boston. So when she started this mastermind group, she said that she wanted to do video calls every week. And I thought, oh, that's really awesome, because like, I'm not sure what a mastermind group is, but at least we'll be able to talk to each other every single week and see each other, which will be really good for our friendship. And we won't, just fade away as sometimes friends do who don't live in the same place. So I joined this group not really knowing what it was, and it ended up being one of my favorite things, because Amy is a writer as well, and she also is writing a book. I'm writing a book too. And she struggles with a lot of the same things that I struggle with. And so we end up spending about half of our time talking about our lives and, catching up on what happened during the week. But then we talk about the struggles that we have of writing and blogging and business and things like that. And then we always, at the end of every week, we give ourselves homework to do. So sometimes it's getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's exercising. Sometimes it's meditation. Whatever it is that we're struggling with, we find something that we know will help that, and we assign ourselves homework. So it's kind of like accountability as well as showing up every single week. That it makes a huge difference. Having support makes a huge difference in whether you have success or not, because some of us, like me, need people to push them along the way. And just having somebody who is holding you accountable, who's asking you, did you do that thing that you said that you were going to do? That's all it takes for me to do the thing. And sometimes it's that consistency, writing a blog post every single week, posting on Instagram every single day. That's what makes the difference between you having success or not having success. And it also makes the difference in how quickly you're going to have success, right? That support makes all the difference. So when you talk about courses and mastermind groups, they come with a cost, right? And let's see, the business course that I took cost $5,000 for 12 weeks. The mastermind group doesn't cost me anything except for time. We spend about an hour every week, and then how much ever time that it takes me to do our homework, which isn't that much time, but it can be if you're busy doing something else, right? It's a commitment. And the business course, that was one that was really expensive for me, because I didn't just have $5,000 sitting in a bank account, unfortunately. But when it comes to investing in yourself, when it comes to investing in myself, for the longest time I settle, I can't afford it. I really can't afford it. But I realized that that's a really dangerous thing to say, right? I realized that I have to stop saying that I can't afford it. There are other things that I wouldn't always say, well, I can't afford doing that. Things like getting my hair done. I'm sure that you've noticed from the pictures of me, and from if you've watched my videos, seen other pictures of me. I like to have my hair blonde color, like a platinum blonde color. It's not naturally that color, unfortunately. So, um, getting my hair done for me is getting it dyed this blonde color, and it's like highlights, and it takes 3 or 4 hours to get it done, and it costs probably $250 to $300. And if I'm going to do it right, I need to get it done every 6 weeks in order for it to not look like it's really growing out bad. And spending $300 every 6 weeks, that's a lot of money. Over the course of a year, it ends up being a lot of money. And so it's easy for me to say, how can I afford to do that? How can I afford $300 every 6 weeks? But the thing is that getting my hair done, it's not just about my hair. I love the experience of going to the salon and feeling pampered. I feel like a whole new person when I get my hair cut and styled and dyed and it looks really good. It makes me feel like $1,000,000. It gives me a lot more confidence. So in my head, I think, well, how can I afford not to have that experience? How can I afford not to have that confidence? And don't I deserve to be pampered and to feel good about myself, even if it's only once every 6 weeks? Another thing for me that feels like luxury is my apartment. I live in this really nice apartment. These are pictures before we moved in. But as you can see, it has these gorgeous windows, and there's 4 of them. And they're almost like floor to ceiling windows. And that was what sold me on the apartment. When we first looked at it, that was it. But I love that it's brand new, that nobody else has ever lived in it. I love the massive island. I like, well, the floors, they're not hardwood, but they look like they're hardwood. It's a nice building that's in a pretty nice part of town. And when people hear the name of the building, they're like, oh, how do you afford to live in that apartment? Are you guys wealthy or something? And the answer is no, I'm not wealthy. I'm certainly not wealthy. But to me, again, it's how can you afford not to? I want to live in a nice building because I want to feel safe. I spend a lot of time at home, right? And I want to live in a nice place that I love. I want to live in a place that makes me feel comfortable, a place that I want to go home to. I want to know that I'm taken care of, that if, the dishwasher or the refrigerator breaks at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, that somebody's going to show up relatively soon and fix it. And when you live in a nice apartment building, they have 24-hour maintenance that will come and fix those things for you. So for me, the question is not how can you afford it? It's how can I not afford it? How can I not afford to live in a place that I love? How can I afford to sacrifice my safety? I don't want to sacrifice my safety. For the longest time, I was a single woman living by myself. And now my niece lives with me. She's 19. So I feel like I'm responsible for her too. And I can't afford to put her in danger either. We have to live in a safe place. How can I afford to sacrifice my peace and my happiness? I can't. I really can't. I'll pay for a nicer apartment all day long just for all of those things. I can't afford not to. Another thing for me is Starbucks. I know I talk about Starbucks a lot, and Starbucks kind of feels like the same as me getting my hair done. Every time I go, I feel like I've done something special for myself. It makes me feel like I'm pampered. And yes, it's expensive. The coffee that I drink isn't really coffee. It's more like candy bar in a cup with a little bit of espresso. And it's almost $7 for a cup of coffee, which is a lot. But it makes me feel good. It makes me feel special. And how can I not afford that? Right? I like that experience, and I like to feel pampered and to feel good. And if that means that I have to spend a little bit of money to feel that way, then I'm going to do that. This is my new handbag that I got for my birthday. I think I have 4 Kate Spade handbags now, which are expensive for me because I'm used to buying handbags at Walmart or Target. I have never spent $100 or $200 or $300 on a handbag. But I bought myself a new one for my birthday because it makes me feel special. Not just to buy it, but every single day when I take it to work, when I go to the store, even if I'm just going to Target or the grocery store, it makes me feel special. And again, how can I not afford that? So when we talk about investing in ourselves, spending $100 may be a lot for you. Spending $5,000 on the business course that I took, that was a stretch for me, but I knew that I couldn't afford not to. It's not about the money. It's about the experience. It's about what will the class do for you? What will that experience do for you? And you have to ask yourself, what would your life look like if you invested in yourself more? If you knew that you deserved it, and if you believed that you deserved it, what would your life look like? What would it look like if you had a blog where you could help yourself while you're helping others? And where you could make a living at the same time? You wouldn't have to go to that job that you hate anymore. You wouldn't have to take your kids to the babysitter. You could buy that house in that neighborhood that you've been dreaming about. There's actually a neighborhood behind the apartments where I live that has these gorgeous houses. They remind me of these houses that I saw when I was living in North Carolina. I should have taken a picture of them, which I don't think that I did. No. And of course I've gone too far now. But they look like Barbie doll houses or like gingerbread houses to me. And I like to walk through the neighborhood and just look at the houses. Kind of, it probably makes me look a little bit creepy because I walk back there all the time. But I like to dream about the day that I can afford one of those houses. That's what investing in myself looks like for me. It looks like, I mean, that's the dream of getting to buy one of those houses. I imagine the realtor like handing me the key, and it's like this dream, like one of those super cheesy Hallmark movies. But that dream, that goal is what drives me forward, and that's the dream. That's what pushes me to do more, to work harder, and to just keep going. So I wanted to ask you, what's your dream? And what is it that drives you forward? Do you have a dream? Is there something that pushes you, that that motivates you? I want you to think about that this week while we're going through this challenge. And I want you to think about why you want to start a blog. Is there something that's pulling you to start a blog? Is your intuition telling you that you need to do that? I want to give you some homework. That's kind of part of your homework. Think about what your dream is. Think about why you want to start a blog. And then I want you to find a blog that you really love. Maybe you don't have a blog that you read, and that's totally fine. If you don't, go over to Pinterest and type in the top something that interests you or something that you'd like to learn more about. Maybe it's blogging. Maybe there's something like depression or anxiety that you're struggling with. Maybe it's cooking dinner because, Pinterest is really good for recipes and stuff like that. Maybe it's a hobby or an interest that you have. Just find a blog that you really like to read. Oh, it can even be about INFJs too. I know there's a bunch of blogs about personality types. So find a blog that you love and then write down what you love about it. Maybe it's the design of the blog, maybe it's the content that's there, maybe it's the way that the author writes it. But write down what you love about it. There's a little bit of homework because we only have so much time together during this challenge. We just have enough time to scratch the surface. There's a whole process of so many steps, and we really only have time to cover just the first part. But I'm really confident that at the end of this week, you're going to feel like this is such a good use of your time. For those of you who want more, to take another step, we can do that together. I will have an invitation for you later this week, but we'll talk about that later. For now, I'm going to leave you with the homework. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments of the video, because I know that I've kept you here for way too long already. So I'm going to check in on the comments and make sure that everything gets answered. And I'll also answer some of them tomorrow too. So I'll meet you back here tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time again. And tomorrow we'll talk about how to attract readers and to grow your audience of engaged superfans. So, all right, I will see you then.